part of the UK on the south coast in Shoreham by Sea, and which is just a little bit along the coast from Brighton. I'm a Geordie, really, and I can't quite get used to saying that I live in the southeast, even though I've lived here since I was 18. And it's been a real experience kind of bringing this message to the world in terms of having central to our approach this concept of love, kindness, and compassion. And that's what the Mindful HR Centre does. It's kind of an antidote to the common approach that many businesses will have, which is about looking at people as resources and treating them in that way. And we've seen certainly over a number of decades this kind of shift of really not having that empathy with people. And strangely enough, if we treat people with love and kindness, you generally will get a better response from people. And that's the strange thing, isn't it? A lot of what I do is based on common sense. The Mindful HR Centre has been in existence since 2016, and prior to that, I was a public servant. I worked in local government for 30 years, and I was the HR director across 3 big county councils: East Sussex, Surrey, and Brighton and Hove City Council. And I started my life as leading the school meal service once I left university, and I got a job in local government, and that was my first love and passion. So I'm a kind of a career public servant, and what I decided in the last phase of my career, whatever time I've got left, I wanted to do something that I really felt I could make a difference. And I wasn't necessarily able to do that always in the job that I had. I had to compromise too much in terms of what I really believed was important. So that kind of led me to creating the Mindful HR Centre. And for the time of COVID, probably like many of you, my business world was kind of turned upside down. In March, I had a full order book for the year ahead and beyond. I was traveling the country, going to Europe, doing what I do, a keynote speaker, big group facilitation, working in big organizations and small charity organizations, but my order book was full. And in March, all of it really came to a shuddering halt. So what was it that I was going to have to do and reshift and change my business model and service offer? So it was a time of great stress for me, because I, like many of you also, I need the money to come in to pay my bills, which didn't stop. And I didn't qualify for any government support either. So it was a big issue for me. And for this kind of past 6 or 7 months, it's been a huge time of contrasts, hasn't it, and extremes. For many of us, there's been tragedy, which, some have witnessed firsthand. And, in my own world, my stepfather sadly died 3 weeks ago of COVID. And that has been really difficult for us all to cope with. And the same applies for thousands of people across the country. For some businesses, colleagues, friends, and your customer base, they'll be experiencing some sense of isolation. And for others, this has been a time of real positive reflection. But for me, when I kind of look out there into the world, without question, much of what has carried us through this time is an overwhelming sense of compassion that is being shared so openly throughout this time of fear. And I'm sure that, like myself, we've all faced and continue to face fear at some level during these past months. And certainly now that's, in England anyway, we're now in our second lockdown. And that's hugely challenging because of this kind of real disruption, not only to business, but to our lives in general. And this sense of compassion has suddenly burst into our consciousness much more. Certainly often when I would go into businesses saying this is what I do and this is what I think you need to be aware of, people would often view it a little bit cynically and think it's a little bit too woo-woo, with scented candles and moving it down the chain of secondary items with yoga classes and smoking cessation clinics and their well-being setup. And I'm not kind of belittling those events, but this issue in terms of compassion needs to be first and foremost in the center of people's minds. And certainly for us as individuals, the concept of resilience, well-being, and self-compassion is so fundamentally important. And also for you and your world of business, remembering that this also will be experienced by your customer base. So when I talk about resilience, what do I mean? And resilience for me is this concept of optimistic realism. So you do have to recognize we're in the biggest disruptive piece of action that the world has ever experienced, probably since the Second World War. I mean, it's disrupted the whole of the world. And therefore going into business or working with my clients and people, saying that everything's going to be okay, there's nothing to worry about, it's probably not that realistic, because there is quite a lot to worry about. However, there's got to be a sense of hope, and we've got to have this sense of optimism in terms of at some point things will get better and things will quieten down. The other thing, of course, about resilience is that it's, you might see the reference in terms of that kind of bouncing back, but we don't necessarily want to bounce back from where we've come from. We want to kind of move forward, that sense of I've learned from what has happened, and I learned from the experiences that I've had. And that the need to feel strong and also flexible, that's really the message that I'm encouraging people to have. And that as human beings, much of what we experience is in our heads, and this kind of self-talk and self-dialogue that we've got is often filled with negative language. So encouraging ourselves to be much more optimistic in the language that we use, kinder to ourselves when we talk to each other, and certainly have a little bit of friendliness. If we can't have a sense of love for ourselves, no matter where we are in life, we can always be friendlier to ourselves. And this dialogue that we've got is constant, so encouraging ourselves to slow this down. I'm going to share with you a few techniques that will actually help with that. And also resilience is about trying to think clearly, which is often quite tricky when we're perhaps just in survival mode. And for many of us over, the past months, the sense of, surviving in business is a big issue, but therefore surviving in life, is equally a big issue for many. And it can feel, if you're anything like me, a bit like, it's wading through treacle, and hugely, hugely challenging. So therefore, what can I do about it? And the sense of realistic optimism, we look for routes out of the challenge that we face, compared to kind of that realistic pessimist. Pessimists and optimists of reality will see the challenges as the same, but your optimist will find a way through this and be prepared to test out and try new things, where your pessimist will just sit and say, well, there's no point because nothing's ever going to change or alter. And this is the space of doom that we're all faced with. And then the third thing about resilience for me, which I just want you to reflect on, is giving ourselves space to kind of recover and regroup. And by space, I don't mean hours or weeks. Sometimes it can just be a few seconds or moments or minutes in your day. And breath is the fundamental technique that will help with this. And the techniques that I'm sharing with you today are not complicated. They're very simple, yet sophisticated, and can make a huge dramatic difference to the way that we operate and function on a day-to-day basis, which is hugely important. Also, it's like anything else. The more you do something, the more impact and benefit it will have for you. So what I'm asking you to do is just a little bit more today than you did yesterday. It's kind of this 1 degree of change, rather than saying you need to revolutionize your life. So more of that later when I come on to the techniques. The thing about self-compassion, or compassion generally, why is that important? Unless we can feel kindness to ourselves, love for ourselves, or at least friendliness to ourselves, then we're going to really struggle to feel that for people around us, including your customer base. Remembering these individuals equally are human beings that we're interacting with in business, complicated emotional creatures who will be feeling some sense of fear, anxiety, tension throughout this period of change, and also generally in life. It's just one of those emotional things that people experience. So having this sense of compassion for yourself enables you to connect with people far stronger, and connecting with others is at the heart of human nature. And the more you can kind of access this concept, I can guarantee your business will be more successful because of it, and your life generally will be more kind of rewarding and fulfilling. And to many of us, thinking of compassion and connection perhaps is something that might be a nice to have rather than an essential. And yet, if people feel like they belong and genuinely cared for and cared for one another, they will be more creative, resilient, and eager to contribute and connect with you. And this sense of connection, the sense of coming together, is hugely powerful. And spending a bit of time and therefore slowing down to be able to make these connections is really so important and fundamentally effective for you. And the third area to think about is just this whole kind of thought about mental health and well-being. Good mental health is about feeling well in your mind as well as in your body. And some people call mental health, emotional well-being. And as I said, it's just as important as physical well-being. And roll back a decade ago, you probably wouldn't see hardly anybody out running, cycling. And now it's kind of a common occurrence in our streets, and people giving that space for their physical well-being. And the same applies, if not more so, to your mental well-being. Your mental well-being impacts upon your physical well-being. And your mental well-being is really going to drive the way that you operate and perform and enjoy life. So creating a little bit of space to do that is really so fundamentally important. And if you're in good mental health, you make the most of your potential. It helps you cope with life and the problems that you encounter, because we will all face problems, ups and downs of life as we go about it. And really helps you play a full part with your family and your business, your workplace community, and being among friends. And yet our mental health can change over time. Most of us will suffer some tensions, some sense of anxiety and fear. And generally we can kind of pull ourselves back from that, with this sense of realistic optimism. But for some, it can kind of go that one step further and experience some significant mental health problems in life. But of course, these things, in terms of people who experience mental health problems, happen to other people, don't they? It doesn't happen to you. Here I was in 2016, a really successful, business operator, working in a huge organization, very successful in terms of national profile, and due to kind of the sense of overwhelming demands placed upon me, and I experienced very significant homophobic bullying amongst the executive community, to a point of really trying to undermine and kind of diminish my my presence in the workplace. I suffered a significant mental breakdown, and of course this doesn't happen to me. It's not something that was part of my life, and pushed me to the point of resulting in failing. I'm obviously pleased to say, of taking my life. And never would I have thought this would have happened to me. Here I was at 55, at this point of collapse and complete personal destruction, caused through the challenges I was facing at work. So how did I overcome this? Much of this was given through this kind of sense of connection with other human beings. A couple of people who reached out, and in that space of being able to talk about it was really difficult. I'm very good at masking, shielding myself in terms of just telling everybody I'm okay. And yet there'll be many people out there in your community who certainly at this point will probably be feeling very vulnerable, very alone, very isolated, and perhaps also some of your customer base. And I'm just saying to you, anybody out there, this doesn't have to be the case. And if you need some help, my contact details there. I'm no clinician, and I'm not offering counseling. I'm just offering support from one human being to another. So I'm going to share with you 3 techniques that I have used throughout the course of my recovery, which brings me here to this space, being the chief exec of the Mindful HR Centre. I'm also the chief executive of the Public Sector People Management Association. My business is thriving. So that sense of optimism, that realistic optimism, is out there and real. But I know that I've got to spend time, effective time, quality time, working as much on my mental health and well-being as I do on my physical health and well-being and my business strategy, because otherwise it counts for nothing. So Mark Twain, and I love his work, had this brilliant quote, and he said, "Kindness is the language which the deaf can hear and the blind can see." And today is the International Day of Kindness. So I'm going to do a few things that are going to help you connect with kindness. First of all, there's a template that I want you to take away, and it's the ABC template. So the concept of arriving, giving yourself time to settle and connect, breathing, and then connections. So we'll end with that. But everything predicates around breath and being able to breathe. So I'm going to give you a couple of easy exercises that you can follow. You can do this from your chair if you can't stand up and look at your screen. But I'm going to stand up and take my hat off. And you can do these. They don't take a long time to do every day. And it's just starting by shaking the hands. Make sure you've got a bit of space around you, or you can just do this by the side of your chair. And this is quite a vigorous shake when we're shaking our hands, the fingers coming off the ends of your hands. But obviously being aware if you've got any physical injury, because I don't want to cause any further traumas for you. And then moving to our elbows, shaking away. And we're breathing through the nose and out through the nose for this exercise, unless you're congested, otherwise you might pass out. And then we move to our shoulders and using gravity to drop away the arms from the shoulders. So we're just doing this for a few moments. And I'm going to encourage you to do this, certainly if you're working at a computer, every hour or so. And then just wobbling out the arms. So remembering I come from a background of catering, so I think I used to describe these as blancmange, but I've moved into modern culinary terms, and now I refer to them as Panacotta. So my arms are like Panacotta. So they look firm from a distance, but they've always got a nice wobble in them. Now, arms are a great barometer of our kind of internal feelings. We don't want penguin arms, tight and tense arms. They're always soft down the side of our body. Now, fingertips nice and receptive. And already I can feel a different change in my physical being. My arms are connected, and I've shifted my thinking down from my head into my physical awareness. So now we're going to do a few circular motions with our shoulders. Belly is soft. I'm wearing a waistcoat so I don't have to reveal my food belly from COVID. So I'm going to breathe in through the nose, lift my shoulders up, shoulder blades together and down the spine as we breathe out. 3 of these. Breathing in, lifting the shoulders up to the earlobes, shoulder blades together and down the spine. And then final one, breathing in, shoulders up, shoulder blades together and down the spine. Perfect. And then in the opposite direction, making sure you're not forcing your way through any tension or pain, but we bring our shoulder blades together, breathing in, lifting the shoulders up, rolling around, and as we breathe out, bring the shoulders down. So here we go again, shoulder blades together, breathing in, lifting the shoulders up, and breathing out as we draw them around. And one final rotation, shoulder blades together, breathing in, lifting up, and breathing out around. Perfect. And just shaking those arms free, nice and soft by the side of your body. So, final exercise here. Belly is soft, remember. Breathing in, lifting the shoulders up to the earlobes. Hold for 1 second and drop away. Breathing in, lifting the shoulders up to the earlobes. Hold for 1 second and just let the tension drop away. One last final in-breath up to the earlobes. Hold for 1 second and drop away. Perfect. And this dropping away of tension and rotating the shoulders of tightness allows everything just to settle and still. And what we want to be doing is dropping from our thoughts, this disembodied thought world that we spend most of our time inhabiting. We want them all to be dropping down through the body. So we're going to breathe in future from our feet. So here we've got our inside of the feet. So our feet are hip distance apart and the inside of the feet are parallel with each other. Feeling the feet against the ground beneath. And if you're in a chair, you need to have your knees at a 90-degree angle. So you might need a few blocks to lift the floor up to your feet if you need to. I always sit on a cushion, a bit taller, to kind of allow myself to have this 90 degrees so you can feel the ground beneath your feet. helping you being grounded. So we're going to extend through the legs. So there's no locking of the knee, there's no tightness. So we draw through the legs, belly is soft. Imagine you're hanging yourself in a coat hanger with your shoulders, so they're broadening across the collarbone. The chin is down slightly and back, so you've got an extension in the back of your neck. The crown of the head extending upward. Belly is soft, so just placing your hands on your stomach with your fingertips together, just above your navel. So we're going to imagine the breath coming through the balls of the feet. So it comes right through the legs, through the body to the crown of the head, and then down, back out in the same way. As we breathe in, the diaphragm flattens and the fingers will come apart. And breathing out, they'll come back together. So here we go. Breathing in through the soles of the feet, through the nose, drawing the breath through the legs, through the belly, through the chest, the head to the crown of the head. Those fingertips have just come apart slightly. And squeezing the breath out. So dropping the breath down through the body, through the legs, and out through the feet. And the second deep in-breath. Breathing in to the crown of the head and squeezing the breath out. Dropping everything down through the body, out through the soles of the feet. One last final deep in-breath. Right to the crown of the head and squeezing the breath out. Perfect. Just returning to your seat. So sitting in your chair, sitting bones right to the back of the chair, bringing the knees at a 90 degree. We're just going to take 4 deep in-breaths from the belly, really drawing the breath right into the body. This would be a sense of arriving wherever you go in future. 4 deep in-breaths before you start. Closing your eyes if you feel comfortable, otherwise taking your gaze down to a point on the floor and the desk in front of you. Deep in-breaths. Just allowing the breath then to go to your natural rhythm. So what is that you've got planned for the rest of your day after your networking today? And just thinking that in your mind. And setting your intention of kindness for yourself for the day ahead. Just saying to yourself, may I be well today. May I be happy today. May I be content today. Through the course of the day, just having a few check-ins, perhaps at lunchtime, evening, for dinner, after dinner, and just before you go to bed. Just asking yourself if you were kind to yourself today. Were you content today? And were you happy? And it's not about judging or berating yourself, it's just about noticing and shifting the course of your behavior or action for the day ahead tomorrow. And the other thing that I'm encouraging you to do today on the day of kindness is say something to yourself and then write it down. Something kind about yourself to yourself. And then also write something down which is kind about somebody in your household. And just leave them that little message on a written note where they'll find it today and sign your name on it. And then think about somebody who you've not been in touch with for a while. Someone important to you, but you've not managed to speak with them for a while or see them. And just write something simple and kind about them and give them a call and share it with them on the telephone. And these acts of kindness, these messages of kindness in your mind, creating space for them rather than those messages of criticism, frustration, or negativity. The world is full of negative language, of negative images, of negative expectations, which therefore makes you feel negative. And we have the ability to control the dialogue in our heads and the actions that produce. So 4 deep breaths, setting your intention of kindness, and those 3 acts of kindness cost absolutely nothing apart from a bit of time. And just relaxing for a second, because friends out there in the world of EEC collective networking, the message that I'm asking you to think about, when the day is done, and this day comes to an end, it's important to remember that for all of us human beings, love is what matters. Love is the most important thing in our lives. Love is what makes us human, and love is what makes life worth living, whoever we are. And creating a world of loving kindness, caring, of sharing, connecting, helps us grow together. All we have to do is open our hearts to what's possible and be slightly kinder to ourselves, loving to ourselves, friendlier to ourselves. And this all will drive through a different feeling of contentment and acceptance at the end of the day. And always remember to reach out to someone who hasn't been in your space for a while, and just make that connection, because you never know, that might be the difference for them, particularly at these times of isolation and fear and anxiety, and giving them that sense of hope and purpose. And it equally applies to your good selves. Only a minute or 2 whilst you're showering, as you're eating, washing up, but using this power of the breath to drop everything down from this space of frantic, disembodied thoughts, getting it out from the system and filling your body with a sense of joy and love and kindness is the message that I leave with you. So there's loads more that I could share. I'm just conscious of time, and I really appreciate the opportunity and invite to come and just share these few tips and hints. So your 11 o'clock shakeout, make sure that you work with that. And this task that I've just given you today in terms of being kind to yourself and others, just go with it and see what happens. If it feels different and odd, that means it's working. Because if it's the same and similar, it's probably going to produce the same and similar experiences in your life. And I'm more than happy. I'll be around for a while, and I'm more than happy to take it, have any conversations in chats. And remember, if you need to reach out to me separately, you've got my contact details, and I'm always here for anybody who needs some help. And thank you. And thank you so much, Fiona. And just, I should say one last thing. I really want to be a granted elf for the next 6 weeks. So if there are any vacancies, how amazing is that? Bringing such great joy and happiness into this space of festive run-in. It was amazing. I loved it. So great to meet you all. Thank you.
Forgot to turn the mic on there. I could just see you as an elf.